My, what a wonderful crowd we have today. We must be a popular department. Department and Agency Subcommittee is now in session. It's Tuesday, March 23rd at 3 p.m. and we're in hearing room 3. Members, do we have any personal orders or announcements? I may have one stay off your cell phones. Beck should be here just prematurely, but let's get an update on the changes to the calendar. Item number 3 on the calendar, HB. That's right. You want to take roll, Lisa? Yeah. I said Beck wasn't here.
Vice Chair Kiesling. Beck. Bricken. Here. Carr. Here. Carringer. Present. Chisholm. Present. Halford. Here. Holsclaw.
Present.
Chairman Holsclaw, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Lisa. Item number 3 on the calendar, HB 1415 by Boyd, was rolled to the last calendar. Item number 5 on the calendar, 921 by Ramsey's, rolled to the last calendar. Item number 6 on the calendar, HB 1374 by Cars, rolled to the last calendar. Item number 9, HB 1060 by Vaughn, rolled to the last calendar. Item number 12 on the calendar, 1234 by Husley's, taken off notice. Item number 13 on the calendar, HB 0824 by Jerrigan's, rolled 1 week. Item number 14 on the calendar, 1576 by Thompson, is rolled 1 week. Item number 15 on the calendar, HB 156, rolled 1 week. Oh, missed the number, 1156. 1556. And we've got a special day today. My hair's thinning, but we're going to allow anybody bald-headed to go first, which would be number 11. We're going to move number 11 to the top of the calendar.
Thank you.
You are recognized, Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Chairman and members. I resemble that remark.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, when we set up the online sports betting a couple of years ago, the dollars were designated to go toward the lottery. In consultation with many of our colleagues, what this bill would do is put our investment in our K through 12 facilities right now. About 15 years ago, I've tried to put some excess lottery dollars, but those are tied toward the Constitution. I tried to put some excess lottery dollars toward capital improvements. We created the Energy Efficient School Fund at the time, but I want to create an ongoing resource for our schools at K through 12, and this would put the 80% portion of the dollars currently going to the lottery from online sports betting to go toward K through 12 facilities. In a nutshell, that's what it does, Chairman and members.
Do we have questions or comments? You are recognized, Chairman Brooke.
Representative Hawk, certainly, I think the bill has merit, and I certainly like that it's going to K through 12. I just technically are concerned of the allocation of the money once it's there, how the request for funding of capital improvements will be allocated across the state. And if you could address that, I appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you, Chairman. In the initial form, the dollars would be initiated on a per-pupil basis. There's lots of formulas that get into education. I'm throwing all formulas out the window, and just whatever the number of students in your school system are, multiply that times 29, and that's the number of dollars that will be attributed to your school districts across the state of Tennessee. It is outside the BEP formula. These will be dollars that a school system will be able to bank. There's not a maintenance of effort on these particular dollars. They would go into a fund dedicated, as crafted right now, toward capital improvements and maintenance in facilities back home. We're looking at some different ideas in education about possibly tweaking that to include technology. I'm wanting to keep it in a bank, so to speak. At this point, not for salaries. I wanted to go toward capital improvements and maintenance just because of the uncertain nature of what the online sports gambling, sports betting could be in the future. If it's any indication of what the lottery has been, there has been an upward trajectory, and we've got a fairly consistent revenue stream. But I'd like to keep it with maintenance and facilities, potentially technology at the time, and we may be able to get to where a place, and one of the representatives speaking right after me in another committee will talk about his desire for these funds as well. So, but it might go towards salaries. But right now, the structure of the legislation is toward capital maintenance and facilities for K through 12 facilities.
You're recognized, Chairman Bricken.
Thank you, Chairman. So let me understand that the term bank will the bank be kept at the state level and a local LEA request money out of their allocation from the bank?
Forgive me if that was the question I didn't answer. The answer is yes.
All right, long-term, if a municipality or LEA doesn't request the money, does it just stay there waiting? There's a point in time, I like to think every LEA in the state, if they know there's money for something, will probably ask for it. So it's probably likely that all money will be tapped into, but just kind of.
Thank you, Chairman. And technically, the way the bill is crafted right now, those dollars would reside until they were requested. So those dollars would reside in the fund until they're requested.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions, comments? Representative Beck?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Hawk, you may have mentioned this before I got here, and I apologize for being late. But the $28 million that's projected, that's just a projection at this point, correct? Because it's only been in 3 months. So very, very proud of that fund, and that a member of this committee, Mr. Chairman, last year sponsored this bill, and it was refined in this committee, and I think this committee did an excellent job on it, and very proud of it. And I'm very, very proud that you're wanting to use the funds, because my understanding right now is that basically these funds are just going into a trust account or a savings account for the lottery. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
So they're really not necessary at this point in time, and could be used to build our schools of the future. And I think that's an excellent idea, and I'm very excited to support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you feel that nobody else is going to be squeaking for this $28+ million?
Chairman and members, I'm sure a lot of people will be squeaking for this. That's just a given, and I think it's well, and hopefully that's going to go against the fears of Representative Bricken, that these dollars will be utilized by our school districts in the way that we intend to. But I'm certain that anytime you have a pool of money out there, that there's always pulls and tugs on those dollars. But I think this is a reasonable and a responsible way to utilize these funds.
Good luck in your adventures.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Questions been called? Seeing no objection, we are voting on HB 48. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? You're moving on to full.
Thank you, Chairman. I cut my hair just for you.
Yes. You mean shaved it? Now we're back to item number 1 on the calendar, HB 1049 by Chairman Sapicki. Do I have a motion second? And it looks like we do have an amendment. Is that correct?
4133 drafting code, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. We've got a motion and second on the amendment.
Makes the bill.
So makes the bill. Would you please explain?
Yes, sir. So what this bill does, as amended, this bill will require the comptroller to annually audit an insurance pool, special fund, reserve fund, or legal or administrative entity administering such funds. The bill will clarify which associations and nonprofit corporations must be audited by the comptroller. The requirements of the bill would apply to records that are not open for public if the association or nonprofit corporation was established for the benefit of local government officials or counties, cities, towns, or other local governments, or as a municipal bond financing pool, receives dues, service fees, or any other income from local government officials or local governments that constitute at least 30% of its total annual income, and is authorized under state law to obtain coverage for its employees in the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement Systems. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Will this bill help provide transparency among,
100%, sir. This is a transparency bill for government funds.
which I think we need as much of as possible?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments? You are recognized, Representative Beck.
Thank you. And to the sponsor, does anybody audit these subsidies or organizations at this time?
Mr. Chairman, no, sir.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this was a little hidden gem that's found that we're trying to close the loophole on.
Yes, sir.
Good deal.
Okay. You are recognized, Chairman Bricken.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The comptroller would be responsible for the audits, and I'm certainly, is it clear whether those audits could be done by the comptroller's office or outsourced to third-party auditing firms?
You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great question. Yes, they could outsource those if they so desire, as long as there's no conflict.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, we're voting on HB 1049. Those in favor? Oh. We're voting on amendment 4133. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Now we're voting on the bill, or discussion on the bill, which I think the amendment makes the bill, so.
Motion on the bill.
Motion, question been called on bill?
Sorry.
Those in favor say aye. Opposed? 1049 is moving on full. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Item number 2, HB 78.
Motion. Second.
Got a motion, a second. Looks like we do have an amendment. We have a motion, a second on the amendment.
Motion. Second.
Now the bill's properly before us. You're recognized, Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. The amendment code is 5448.
That is correct.
This is an administration bill, and the Department of General Services has a representative here, from my understanding, to speak to this if we need them. I will explain to you items in relation to this amendment that makes the bill. This bill makes a variety of housekeeping changes regarding the Department of General Services. The first section deletes the Paperwork Reduction Act that was created in the 1970s in an effort to reduce the amount of state paperwork. However, with the advances in technology that we've seen over the years, leading to many agency forms being distributed online, they have made this act redundant. And this bill clarifies that the Chief Procurement Office should keep all records and documents submitted to the committee for protests of solicitations, and that the Commissioner of Finance and Administration will keep the minutes, procedures, and decisions of the protest committee. This amendment makes the law consistent with the current practice. And the bill also changes language to clarify that a solicitation shall include a total estimated scope or volume instead of a maximum liability or total estimated purchase. And I will say that that language would allow for better negotiation by removing the requirement that the Central Procurement Office disclose an agency's total budget for a contract. This bill deletes outdated language and references that are not applicable to the Central Procurement Office. And the final section, Section 7 of the bill, revises a statute that provides for energy performance contracting pilot projects by deleting the pilot project language and making it a permanent option. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have a question. You are recognized, Representative Beck.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Campbell. My question is, I read in here that this deletes the requirement for the Commissioner of TDEC to submit an annual report of results from each pilot project to the Governor, the Comptroller, the Treasurer, and the General Assembly. Why would we want to not know the results of a pilot project?
Recognize it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification on that, can we go
Sure.
out of session for the Department of General Services?
We
I
need-
believe they're on the list.
We need clarification, so we will go out of session. While you're approaching, if you would state your name and who you're with, just for the record.
Chadwick Nottingham, Legislative Liaison, Department of General Services, and with me I have our Deputy Commissioner, John Hall, and that is in regards to Section 5 of the amendment, which has to do with performance contracting, and I would defer to Deputy Commissioner Hall on an answer to that.
Yes, again, my name's John Hull. I'm a Deputy Commissioner in charge of the Department of Stream. And so we believe the energy performance contracting is a good tool for us to add to what we do now. The section about auditing, we would want TDEC to actually audit these projects. We're actually taking away the word temporary from all of that. And so I believe there will be a requirement for TDEC to look over all the numbers and the performance of these contracts.
Do you have additional questions, Representative Beck?
Who's that audit made public to?
I believe there's language, I don't have that right in front of me, but I believe that there's an annual report that is required to be released to the governor, the speakers, and so forth.
Representative Beck?
I still don't understand why we are doing away with the report from the commissioner of TDEC.
I'm not sure how to answer the part about the commissioner of TDEC. I'll just have to reference the bill and get back to you with an answer for that. I just don't have that at the moment with me.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Chadwick Nottingham, Liaison for General Services. So what this is doing is it's deleting a pilot program, and there were no contracts that were ever entered into under the program, so there were no reports ever made. And the reporting process will now go through General Services, and the report will be made to the governor and the speakers of both chambers. So there will still be a reporting process. There was never a report to begin with under the pilot program, because again, there were never contracts entered into under the pilot program.
Representative Beck?
Just because there weren't any pilot programs and there was no report from TDEC, I still don't think it's a good idea to do away with the report on any of the projects by TDEC. Thank you.
Do we need to get you additional information later? Or are you satisfied with the response?
I'm satisfied
Representative
with
Beck.
the response.
Okay.
I don't agree with the response, but I'm satisfied with the response.
Other questions, comments? Representative Bricken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm in general support of this bill. I certainly wish the energy performance contract portion was a separate piece of legislation, though. Again, I just want to go on record, I'm very skeptical of these energy performing guaranteed programs. Again, I hope the procurement office will go very guardedly into those. I think there's just a lot of smoke and mirrors with most of those programs. So that's just, I want to get on the record with that.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, we're voting on Amendment 544. Go back into session. Thank you, gentlemen, for your
Thank you, Chairman and
comments.
members.
We're back in session. We're voting on Amendment 5448. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Amendments on the bill, and it's properly before us. Other questions, Representative Campbell? Comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to add other than I will repeat that the amendment rewrites the bill.
Sounds like you got a radio voice, but
What the good Lord gave me, for better or worse.
we're voting on HB 78. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're moving on to full.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, members.
We're moving down to item number 4. By Chairman Ramsey. We have a motion, second. Looks like we have an amendment. HB 241, Chairman Ramsey. And we do have an amendment. Is that correct? What's
Thank
the
you, Mr.
amendment number you
Chairman,
have?
And it does make the bill.
What's your amendment number?
The number is 5605.
Okay. If you would, please go into explanation on the amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. This is an amendment that makes the bill. We all know that the Tennessee hospitality industry is one of the state's largest employer. In fact, it's one of the highest tax-paying industries in the state. Over the last year, we've estimated 86% of the jobs have been lost and 78% of reduction in restaurant food sales during the pandemic. And in response to that, the governor adopted a series of emergency executive orders permitting the sale of alcoholic beverages and beer to go by liquor by the drink licensees in the state. Local beer boards have also allowed sales of beer to go and for delivery to help businesses in their jurisdictions. And I want to make certain that you understand that this bill does not in any way affect beer board authority or change those sales over the state. The reopening of the hospitality business after being closed has caused many other states to consider and adopt statutes which permit the sale of bottles of wine, containers of beer, and sealed cocktails to help hotels and restaurants recover in reflection of what the governor's done. And I think at this time we have 35 states that allow that. Our legislation is amended, asks the General Assembly to adopt language based on Governor Lee's executive order for a period of 3 years, at which time the authority will expire. And the reality is that restaurants prefer to sell liquor by the drink with food, and they have an extended period of time when people are in their restaurants, and it allows them to actually make a lot more revenue. So they're not interested in keeping this in place for any period of time. It's pretty much just a bridge to try to get through the tough times. The bill subjects these sales of liquor by the drink to liquor by the drink tax, which the governor's executive order did not do. In a time when the state and schools are suffering, of course, from loss of revenue, 50% of the liquor by the drink tax is dedicated to local school budgets. And months of operating under the executive order have shown already that this system can work and help to preserve some of the state's significant industry and their employees. The fiscal note on the bill reflects an estimated increase in sales and liquor by the drink tax in the state and local governments of $9.4 million in the first year. Both the bill and the executive order were designed to result in home consumption and not in vehicles. The order of this and the bill provide for sealed containers and make it illegal to drive to consume alcohol or beer for the driver too, and that law is already in place. An amendment's being offered, which I have discussed, the amendment that makes the bill and removes all references to delivery. The original bill had references to delivery in it, but this takes the delivery portion out of it, makes it clear that the bill is about one thing: curbside service only. The ABC has come to us with some of their concerns and asked us to change the language of the bill, which we're very easily accomplished and glad to do. What it does is add a word "prepared" when referring to food, which must be purchased with any alcohol curbside order. And additional language about using secure tape on mixed beverages sold in a container that make it clear that all openings must be covered and tape must be used that cannot be removed without showing the removal. So if a law enforcement officer observes a container that's been tampered with in a car, they have the right to check that. Cans and wine bottles will not be required any additional security, no more than they are now presently. It makes it clear that the maximum amount of mixed beverages that can be sold per meal is 16 ounces. The amount of wine per meal is a single bottle, which of course is a volume that is in place now. A clear statement that bottles of distilled spirits cannot be sold for curbside sale is a requirement for these curbside sales. Only restaurants and limited service restaurants and wine-only restaurants may make curbside sales, and the significance of that is that it requires these curbside sales to be done only in jurisdictions that have approved liquor by the drink, as well as retail sale of alcohol by referendum. So with that explanation and incurring any questions, I have two representatives from the industry here that'd be willing to answer any of your questions, and so I will just renew my motion with pending any further questions.
We'll go out of session maybe for some other detailed information that I don't know if you can answer, but maybe they can. So we'll step out of session, and we'll hear from both sides. If you would, state your name and who you're with.
Thank you, Chairman. Committee members, my name is Rob Mortensen. I represent the hospitality industry, all the restaurants, hotels across the state. And as you all know, we got hit pretty hard last year with most of our restaurants being closed down on the front side, hoteliers as well. And so this kind of came out as an assistant, as an aid for our restaurants to kind of get them through this past year. It saved quite a few restaurants. Not only that, and I've got a lot of folks across the state from Sevierville to Memphis who have said without this they wouldn't be in business. We've lost about 15% of our restaurants, and really our goal here is to save restaurants going forward. So that's our hope with this. We don't plan on doing it forever. It really does not keep our restaurants in business. At the end of the day, we want folks sitting down in our restaurants eating the food. They're going to make more money than delivery and pickup. So our hope is 2 years. A lot of our restaurants have big notes and loans, taking a lot of money out of their savings at the end of the day. And a lot of these restaurants, are the ones that are hurting are your family businesses. Your chains, your bigger restaurants, they got deeper pockets, but it's your smaller, your family-owned restaurants that are really struggling right now. So our hope is that this will get them through the next year, and we've saved some restaurants at the end of the day.
One of the big questions that I'd have going through all this is your people doing the delivery service.
Yes, sir.
How do they go about ensuring that they're delivering to appropriate age people and the validation? Because I've heard back as numbers as when this first started, 59, 60% compliance. And as a father of many girls, that would concern me. So if you would indulge me.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And keep in mind, this is not about delivery. This is about curbside. It's taking the food from inside the restaurant and handing it to the cars. What we didn't have in the governor's executive order was training, and we put that into this bill. So all of the folks that deliver the food to the car, they've got to be trained now. They weren't before. So yes, we did see that issue as well. We've encouraged our restaurants statewide. I think one of the biggest challenges that we had for most folks, they were just trying to stay alive. And so for them, they weren't thinking a whole lot about that. Not right or wrong, it is what it was during that time. But what we've put into place is training through the ABC for those folks that deliver that liquor to the cars. They got to be licensed and trained.
Okay. Other? You are recognized, Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to piggyback off the chairman's question, it's my understanding in reading the amendment that the Uber Eats and the Grubhubs are not going to be able to deliver the mixed drinks anymore. Is that correct?
That I don't know. No, sir. This is not part of that legislation, so I'm not familiar with that.
That's not correct?
That one.
We took that out. That was in the original bill to allow delivery but that portion is out. Now, there may be another vehicle by code, but it's not going to be in this bill.
Okay, to the sponsor, so when it says in your amendment that all references to delivery have been
But
taken out,
If,
that's,
if we're gonna get in a discussion with the representative, we'll go back into
Okay.
session, so,
I'll wait, thank you.
okay.
Chairman, could I bring Dan Haskell up? He's the attorney that kind of helped work on the
Okay, now
legislation.
here's what the guidelines, the rails we're gonna put on this is I don't wanna get done running debate.
Yes, sir.
2 minutes and you're done, okay?
Thank you. I'm Dan Haskell, longtime lobbyist for the for the hospitality industry and a longtime liquor lawyer. The question about delivery by Grubhub and those kinds of folks is untouched in this bill. We didn't provide for delivery. Our guys are mostly not interested in delivery. They're interested only in curbside service. This bill is not about taking the product and giving it to some third-party service and delivering it someplace else. The liquor stores have that authority and are currently doing that. I mean, many of us have taken advantage of that. This bill is not about this. This only is about a restaurant taking food out to somebody's car, checking the ID of the person making the purchase, and delivering it to them.
Okay. Representative Beck?
So is it permissible for Grubhub to deliver my number 5 in a margarita? Is that what you're saying?
This bill doesn't affect that. I don't think it's legal today. I think there are others who believe it is, but that's not covered by this bill. We weren't intending to do anything to either enable that or to prevent it.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Representative Chisholm, you are recognized.
The question I have is, during this time of the pandemic, do you all know what percentage of revenue that restaurants have received due to curbside alcohol?
Thank you, Representative. Are you asking how much money they probably received overall, whether through PPP or? No, sir. That's hard to tell. So they were able to receive 2 PPPs, payroll protection checks, if they qualified. The problem is a lot of folks left. There were some challenges with the amount of money they could pull, because once that person left, you couldn't pull those dollars. So I think in total, it was 6 months out of the year is what they received. It was able to receive.
Representative Chisholm?
I guess I was referring to the percentage of sales as restaurants could sell alcohol with their food. I guess I'm not sure if there's a real answer for it, but what do y'all feel like has been the percentage of revenue that's come with the food?
Yes, sir. I think I know what you're asking. How much money did they make off of to-go liquor
Yes.
sales? It's been about a 10%. For those that have utilized it, it adds 10% to the revenue. And so for a lot of those folks, that 10% has kept them afloat. I mean, if you're 10% breaking even, or 10%, one way or the other, it saves some folks. And some of it just kept them from going deeper into the hole. So, but about 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, of the service provided, how much additional service is going to be provided if we vote this in? I mean, as far as just like policing it, do you think we need additional resources, those kind of things to figure out, we're staying compliant?
I've discussed this a little bit with the ABC, and the answer is the number of restaurants has gone down 15 or 18%. I would think the agents they have dedicated to liquor by the drink should be adequate to oversee this activity. What they do is not noticeably different, and to be fair, I came from the ABC. I was with the ABC for 4 years ago. This is the same thing you do with as when you're doing minor checks inside the restaurant. You're doing the same thing outside the restaurant. You're making the same visit. You're just staying a few minutes longer to look at a different kind of activity. Most of what the ABC does in this involves bringing a confidential informant and trying to make a purchase.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think we've got ABC here. I'd like to probably hear his viewpoint on that. State your name and who you're with for the record.
Thank you, Chairman. Aaron Rummage with the Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission.
Okay. We have questions or comments for this young man? Representative Carr, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as everybody knows, I've been a pretty hard question on this. And I guess my question to you, Mr. Rummage, would be, have y'all, twofold on this question, have y'all done some underage stings on this? And if so, how did that go?
We did about 320 checks on the curbside to go, and the compliance rate was 59%. Normal compliance rate is about 82% for the last 2 years in regular LBD inside sales, so it was lower. That 300 represents about 10%. When you talk about these three license types that we're able to utilize this, it's roughly about 3,000. Whether or not all of those chose to do it or not, but we did have, the sample was about 10% of the total licensees that were allowed to do it. So it was significantly lower than normal.
You're saying it was lower than normal on the ones you called?
For the curbside, yes, sir.
Okay, I guess my last question is now, if this, and this is, like I said, I've had a hard time with this, but if, could this maybe go to, could a fast food restaurant or somebody get one of these if they want to? They say like a Taco Bell or somebody and get a license and start, selling margaritas out the drive-through window, and as long as they check as they go through there, and that would be one thing like that. And I'm just using that as an example. Could it be any other drive-through restaurant on that particular thing?
To my understanding, thank you, Chairman. To my understanding, the words drive-through window are in the amendment. So if that restaurant, any restaurant, meets the requirements, has a kitchen, certain number of chairs, there's several other, they could do that, I think. So yeah, and we have issued a license to Taco Bell, not for a drive-through, but they did get a license. They have a little cantina, so they certainly are, in that space, I guess, so to speak. So I believe so, if they meet all the other requirements. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Chisholm.
All right. Do you think this bill would encourage new businesses to start doing curbside? Do you think businesses who've never done it before will be encouraged to start doing so under this bill?
That's a very, very good question. When Executive Order 17 came out in March, it didn't require them to notify us, so we didn't know who was doing it and who wasn't doing it. And when we would do our minor compliance checks, that's how we would find out. We do a kind of a pre-operational plan, and we would call places, and some of them would do it and some of them wouldn't. I think we, I don't know if I could give you an answer on that. That does make me remember one of the statements earlier about we haven't seen a dramatic, I think we've seen a 2 to 5% increase on our licenses. Overall, some may have turned in their license and we've had more apply, but as we look at it broadly, we haven't seen any significant drop in our license applications. But I don't know if I can answer that for you.
Do you're just talking about licenses and applications as far as, do you look at number of transactions and try to do audits, a percentage according to that? How's that done?
So we are a current service revenue department. That's how our funding, so we track it monthly to see how, because if we have a lot of licenses fall off, then our funding goes way down. And so I don't think we've looked at it to see, we know that the significant growth overall has been in the LBD, the on-premise consumption, both wine and grocery store, package stores, they've stayed pretty steady over the years. But our liquor by the drink has been the one with the growth. So I would assume that it would be the liquor by the drink would be where any growth is.
So you being from the ABC, do you feel like if this bill goes through, that it would require you to have more officers to do audits or surveillance?
Yes, sir. And we think we recommended to fiscal review that we would need 4 to 6 agents. This activity is different than inside sales. It takes longer to perform that check. We have to call, order the food, drive over there, pick it up. Whereas a normal inside sale is, a minor, we follow a minor inside and just see if they'll sell. And so it is a lot more arduous of a project to do. So we think, but we want to be conservative about it. And so we think 4 to 6 would be a reasonable, and I was going to bring that up. This is the policy that you want. We think that 4 to 6 would help us to also do the checks. And with the lower number, it seemed like the activity was just kind of inherently different. So we think that we need 4 to 6, I guess. Yes, sir.
Okay. Representative Chisholm?
Last question.
Okay.
Have you all seen an increase in citations since the executive order? Either from yourself or law enforcement?
Let's see. When the pandemic hit, a lot of places just shuttered it was really like kind of March and April. I don't think year over year from 2019 to 2020, like the fines were up. But like I said before, that percentage was lower. And I guess we would track it through fines. I'd have to look. I don't remember anybody talking about, a significant increase in, fines, but I can check on that and get you that information if you would like that.
I think those numbers be skewed because business shutting down, plus everybody staying at home and drinking. So I don't know if you give you a good number or not.
Happy to get it for you if the committee would like that.
Other questions, comments? Representative Bricken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of kind of hopefully quick questions. One, I am disturbed that the compliance of minor percentages, your experience has certainly dropped down to 59%. I want to get a clarification. Does a restaurant under this bill have to notify ABC they're going to do curbside, and y'all have a list of restaurants on record that are providing curbside delivery of food and alcohol?
I don't think it's specifically addressed in the bill. As I spoke with our director and our legal staff, we feel like we have the authority to ask or put it on a question on our application or our renewals. So I think we would have the authority to find that out.
Well, I would certainly hope so. I mean, because it certainly seems like a restaurant could just kind of periodically turn on and off the spigot, no pun intended here. And how does it apply to carry out? If I went and ordered a takeout and wanted drinks, does the same rules apply for takeout as pickup, curbside?
I think so, yes, sir. What the term is, the curbside is, it's really just to-go alcohol. I believe, I could call a restaurant and either go inside and get it to go, or I could have it delivered to the car. So I think so. It's just more of a general term.
And the last, it's just a question I would like for the here on record. Do you think the 3 years is the appropriate sunset of this, or do y'all think another term is more appropriate?
So my understanding that it was a 2-year sunset in the amendment,
All right.
and maybe we could
I
clarify.
think that is correct.
In the
That is
amendment, okay,
correct.
so 2024, so it's 2020,
So,
sorry, I was still looking at 2024. So they are
okay.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Carringer, you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to, from serving on Metro Drug Coalition Board and still serving in Knox County, when you mentioned the 59% and that you would have to hire more agents. So there's a cost that's going to come to all of us for having to hire more agents to take care of this. And this makes me really, really concerned about proms coming up. There will probably be some 21-year-olds going to proms in the state of Tennessee, and that concerns me that they could order food and order a mixed drink, and you can't deny the 21-year-old, but what about everybody else in the car? And so that does give me tremendous heartburn. And two, I realize a lot of restaurants suffer, but a lot of restaurants have done more business in my particular area than normal. And so why really did we have to amend it from 2023 to 2024 that long? I mean, if you did for just a year, and I don't know that whose question really or what that is, but to hire more agents, I think is a big concern for all of us because we have a hard time keeping up with people selling in convenience stores and all in Knox County. So I think every county has that with selling to underage. So what is do you have a cost as to what that would cost to hire 5 or 6 more agents? And where does that come from?
To give you an exact, I can give you probably a rough estimate today. I'm hesitant to do that. I think average salary is about $60,000, and then they have a car. So I'm hesitant to give you that exact number. I will say we are fully funded with our license fees. And we do feel like we have some room to do that. We are looking for the best avenue through the budget process and kind of a novice at the budget process. So, but we would like your support if y'all choose to make this a state policy that we would be able to get those. Now, as we look at this current amendment, I believe it is 2 years. There was an amendment that was 3 years, but we've dropped it down to 2 years. So just to clear that up. But yes, ma'am, it's about $60,000 for salary. And then there's cars and things like that that go into that too. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Keesling?
Thank you, Chair. Real quick, to you, Aaron, how many of the 95 counties, how many does this legislation affect? How many counties? Do you know right now?
In order for this to occur, you have a city or county would have to pass the referendum. Okay. I think most counties, there's only a few counties that have passed a referendum, so it's really just the cities we're talking about. And I looked at, I think it's about, this would not apply in 26 of your smaller cities. Now, there's hundreds of cities out there, so it's just a small amount that would not be able to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Rummage. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman Hoffer, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you mentioned the 4 to 6 agents that would be required if this happens, and if it were to end, it probably won't, but if it were to end in 2024, what happens to those agents? Are they just out of a job?
We have plenty of work for them. It is a very good question. This is a unique situation with I'm sure those agents would not be specifically doing this. It would be incorporated throughout the whole agency this extra work, but we would need those extra agents to evenly spread that out. So there's always, we have, 4,000 to 5,000 licensees out there. We have people shipping out of, into our state. And so there's always work to be done. So I would anticipate that we would keep them. We wouldn't, but very good question though.
Utilize them in a different manner, in other words.
Yes, sir.
Other questions, comments? Well, let's go, having that been said, and I think you've answered all the questions, let's go back into session.
Thank you.
And we're still on 5605. You got the drink, so you're ready to roll. And we have questions or comments on the amendment.
And I would say the confusion about the 2 and 3 years, the original intent when we rewrote the amendment that made the bill, the original bill had 3 years. The intent was for the amendment to have 3 years. It did not have it, whether it was a typo or whatever, it had 2 years on there. And so we had constructed another amendment to make it 3 years, which we were going to look at. But I'm signaled from the folks that brought me the amendment, the hospitality group, that they felt like 2 years would be adequate. And as I say, the reality is these businesses don't want people taking alcoholic beverages home. They want to sell food, and you drink more when you're sitting for 2 hours in a restaurant and eat. But the situation is that they don't have much choice now. So they don't want it to extend.
Representative Carringer.
Did you say they don't want it to extend, or they do, the restaurants?
No, their interest is not to go beyond 2 or 3 years, because we see in the fiscal note that each year the tax revenue drops as far as liquor by the drink tax. And the governor, of course, when he passed the executive order, he didn't require tax to be paid on this liquor by the drink. So the state's better off when they sell it in the restaurant. They're better off because they sell food with it and they sell more drinks. And so they know that.
And that's what I failed to mention is I am really about supporting our servers, and they are the ones that have probably suffered more with the restaurants being closed and all this. So things are ramping back up, and I think we ought to be encouraging our businesses and ought to open up everywhere so that the servers and all can get back to work and be able to provide for their families instead of encouraging the curb. Mm-hmm. We ought to be encouraging to get them back in there and be in the restaurants and help.
That's the goal that they want, believe me.
Other questions, comments? Representative Bricken.
I'm going to just still go back. The only thing most troubling is for local officials and ABC not to know who is actually providing this curbside or carry-out service. I think somewhere we need, if this bill goes forward, to tighten that up. Because I think local officials and the ABC needs to know, because companies could turn it on one week, turn it on one night. So that is just a piece of this that I wish would get addressed as this bill goes forward.
And certainly this bill does not change that in any way. Their ability to, in between application renewals, of course, they can put any question they want to on an application renewal, which is yearly. But this bill doesn't change that, make it longer or shorter. So it might be something that they could accommodate. But you got a good point, certainly.
Let's go out of session for a second and get a little explanation from legal on that. State your name.
Matt Money from Legal. That was something I think we contemplated was putting in specific authority for rulemaking, but the ABC has broad rulemaking authority to regulate Title 57, and I would presume, and I'm looking at the ABC, that they would want to consider doing something like that to make sure that they had, go through the process of adopting some rules and parameters for this type of activity. But they certainly have the authority to do that administratively.
Okay.
A clarification, they would have authority to get the licensee to say, I'm going to do carry out, so, or curbside delivery or service, I should say. So as licenses come up, the establishment would have to say, yes, I'll do curbside delivery. But if they say no, then that would prohibit that business from providing that service?
In my opinion, I think the ABC has the authority to require some type of notice that they're going to be involved in this activity, whether it be by their renewal application or putting them in some kind of registry that the ABC creates so that they'll know who's doing this.
Representative Ricker. Chairman Keesling.
Thank you, Chairman. To legal. So what we have here is Sonic. I pull up into Sonic and it's curb. I mean, if locally, if a Sonic is located in a city, I mean, this is going to be able to. They're going to be able to deliver and sell these beverages. Correct? Legal.
Matt Mundy from Legal. Not deliver. They certainly, I will repeat what the ABC said, if they meet the parameters to hold a full restaurant license, it's certainly conceivable if they got a liquor license that they could.
So it's restaurant then?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. That interests me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Looks like other questions for legal? Seeing none, we'll go back into session. You are recognized, Chairman Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And there are strict relationships and percentages on table space. Sonic could not do that because they don't have the table space it requires to get a license. And as far as Taco Bell or an organization like that, they would have to revamp their whole employee system. You can't have minimum wage employees working in a liquor by the drink establishment. You have to have certification and they have to be registered and have training. So for a 2-year situation like this, I can't imagine any employer wanting to change their whole staff when it's going to go away.
Other questions, comments on the Chairman, Representative Carr.
Thank you. And I have, and of course, I have been with the hospitality industry up in Superior County for a long time, and I've had a hard time about this. But I was just wondering, we have several distilleries, and I think they meet the qualifications for that. And if they opened up a drive-through window and started serving a hamburger or something, then they would possibly qualify for that, wouldn't they? Under this.
I think. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized.
My understanding is that they are a different regulation. I think that they have instead of liquor by the drink licenses, don't they have a different license? I'm sorry. I don't know whether you want to go out of
No.
I mean, I don't think that would be appropriate, and I can't imagine them doing that for a 2-year shot at this. I don't, because they're not allowed to sell bottles of liquor. You're supposed to post a sign that says we cannot sell bottles of liquor. It's just a 16-ounce mixed drink. So I can't imagine that would be something that they would find profitable just over a 2-year period. I've never run a restaurant, but that's my estimation.
Representative Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. That was my concern about that and a lot of people in traffic up and down the sidewalks and everything. So, I mean, that's all I was worried about. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Chisholm.
to the sponsor.
Yes, sir.
Do you think, as the state opens back up, do you think less or more people over time will be using this service?
Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized.
Oh, well, yeah. I think less, and I think the fiscal review thinks it's going to be less too, because each subsequent year is less, and the expectation is that the money is going to be spent inside the establishment. So I think it will be less, and the intent here, and say we have an organization that sells shots of moonshine. I think it's probably better, and the intent of this is that it's going to be in a sealed container. It's going to be taken home and consumed at home, and that's the intent of the legislation. That it's worked in a way that it'll be taken home and consumed with the food that's purchased, and that's much more desirable than to have a moonshine restaurant that's doing shots and then them go out on the street. Be my estimation.
Representative Chisholm.
All right, last question. In 2 years, do you really think those parties would really be willing to put the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak?
Representative
Mr. Chairman, I certainly do. I've been told these men represent 7,500 hospitality organizations or clients across the state, and their statement is that we make more money when people come to our restaurant, eat the 2 or 3 portions of food that they get, and have 2 or 3 drinks with it because they're there for 2 hours. So I do. I don't think this is going to be a moneymaker. I think it's just it's intended to be a bridge.
I see them wanting both myself, but you know. Other questions, comments? He Chairman Keesley.
Just to, for the record, now Bob, where's this parked over at the Senate? Is it still sitting there in their state and local government committee? Is that where it is? What's the status over there at the Senate?
That's my understanding. I don't think it's moved out yet.
So, okay, okay. That's all, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you, Chairman Ramsey.
Any other questions, comments? Representative Beck, last one.
Thank you, sir. I just want to say that I've heard from many of my restaurants, and they've had a horrible time. And many of them have just been hanging on by a thread. And this has helped them get through. And if you'll notice, I mean, one thing that really helped them is they didn't have to pay the liquor by the drink tax. That liquor by the drink tax comes back in this bill. And we really, you know, our restaurants support so many employees, so many servers, as my colleague from Knoxville said, and most people do tip on the to-go that goes to the servers and to the cooks and to the other people who work there. It's just this is so vital to our restaurants, who then turn around farm to table, buy from our farmers. It just cascades down how much these restaurants, and we really need to stand by them right now, and that's the reason I intend to support your bill. Thank you very much.
Other questions, comments? Question's been called on the amendment. We are voting on 5605. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. We're on the amendment. Amendment passes on the bill. Now the bill's properly before us. Question on the bill. Those in favor of HB 0241 say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The ayes have it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman.
We're now on House Bill 720 by Representative Akeem. We have a motion, second, and we do have an amendment. What's your amendment code? So you did get with the Senate, and we got this amendment on the bill, or trying to put it on the bill. Okay. Amendment 554, we're in discussion. We have questions, comments on the amendment? We got a motion. I didn't know. We have a motion second. We have questions, comments? Those seeing none, those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Amendment goes on the bill. Now the bill is properly before us.
Yes, sir.
On House Bill 720, we have questions, comments? Seeing none, we're voting on HB 720. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Bill goes on to full.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
We're on HB 1227. You are recognized, Chairman Reagan. This bill, I think, has been rolled from last week. And we were on Amendment 437. It was on the bill, right? And you also are showing additional amendments. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The previous amendment drew some flack, so this bill is replacing that one, or this amendment. It's 5552.
So that's the full and only amendment going on to the bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's untimely filed, and I would ask the committee if we're willing to entertain that motion. Do I have objection? Seeing none, we're going to entertain that amendment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By way of explaining this, it makes the bill, rewrites the bill, and essentially, this amendment is about the history of our state and protecting it and recognizing the importance. The bill before you strengthens and further protects the preservation of Tennessee history. The legislature in the past has not had a role in selecting members of the Tennessee Historical Commission. The prime purpose of this bill is to vacate the current commission, which is entirely appointed by the governor, and set up a new appointment system, which is spread among the two speakers of the chambers and the governor, so that the General Assembly can now have a voice, if you will, in ensuring that the Tennessee Historical Commission is aware of the people that we represent. Right now, some would argue that's not the case. With that explanation, I can go into detail on why I changed the amendment if you prefer, but the long and the short of it is we're reducing the committee membership numbers from 29 to 18, which is saving the state some money, and besides divvying it up among the three chambers. And it also creates a mechanism whereby the speakers are notified when the commission recommends any changes. Additionally, it requires a public entity to include a petition for a waiver to the commission for proving that they own a memorial if they're going to change it. With that explanation, I stand ready to answer questions.
Need a motion second? Okay. Now we're on the amendment, so questions on the amendment? Representative Beck.
Thank you. Chairman Reagan, what's your thoughts in reducing the size of the board or the commission?
29 members, I was told, and I believe personally, is too large a number. It's unwieldy. It's expensive for us as taxpayers to maintain. Frankly, I thought 12 was enough, but in discussion with some other members of this legislature, as well as some of the citizens. 18 was determined to be a proper number for that.
Question back.
And do you know if this committee has ever had problems getting a quorum, or they usually have good attendance, or do you know?
I do not know conclusively. I know in some cases there's been some difficulties, but it's not, my understanding is that, for one thing, the things that they consider have been somewhat summarily handled by one individual. I think all of you have seen a copy of the letter. And the idea, again, is to get this in front of a group that represents more than just the governor's judgment. If you will permit me, I would submit to you that this body, the General Assembly, has a vested interest under the doctrine of separation of powers and checks and balances to have a say in this. So quite straightforwardly, it's not that I dislike the governor or the commission. I think that we collectively, representing the people that we represent, need to have our say in this.
Representative Beck.
And also in this amendment, you're extending the time that the commission can accept a complaint from 120 days to 2 years. What's your thought on that?
The idea behind that straightforwardly is this commission is not necessarily, or has not been necessarily as forthcoming in putting out publicity on some things that they've done as they could be. In some cases in the past, the press has gotten hold of things and put it out for them, but in other cases they haven't. The idea simply is to give enough time, especially for things that are of historical importance for those who may not have been aware that they were taking action or planning on action, to be able to get their input in. Since we're talking historical monuments, usually we're talking about things that have been around 100 years or more. I don't think 2 years is excessive.
Representative Beck.
And last question, I'm for it, and since this was untimely filed, we're just getting to look at this. You're requiring proof of ownership of the memorial. I mean, there's not a title on memorials. How would you propose that they show proof of ownership for an entity?
Usually when you have a historical document or a historical monument, a historical building, there is a paper trail associated with that, and that paper trail would demonstrate ownership.
Let's, our committee's running out of time a little bit, and this is a very critical matter, and I'd like to hear from all sides. So we have individuals here that's traveled to come and do a presentation, so I'm gonna let them give 2.5 minutes each, and then we'll probably end up rolling this bill to next week. So if you would, we're gonna go out of session, then be heard from them. And it looks like I have an Elizabeth Corker. Is that correct? Is she here? Okay, now you've got about 2.5 minutes and you need to stay on the subject matter. State your name, who you're with, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chairman Holzclaw, committee members. My name is Elizabeth Coker. I'm a native Tennessean. I have covered the Tennessee Historical Commission as a news reporter for 13 years, beginning in 2013. My publisher passed away about 2 years ago, but I have become compelled to continue on with my concern over this commission because, quite frankly, it's just gone rogue. The legislature has no idea the number of violations that this commission has committed in the last several years. I have a letter that I wrote to my representative Tim Rudd in the 34th District outlining all those violations. I'll be happy to give you a copy of that letter.
Please make sure we all get that.
At the end of this. But just to go over some of those violations, I'm going to just hit those, and then if you have questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them. Number one, open meetings violations. No notice, no public hearings. And this includes land acquisition. And we're talking millions of dollars through the Wars Commission that they have absconded through the committee system. I personally filed 2 complaints, one 18 months ago. I'm still waiting to be heard by the commission.
Okay, now, just as far as you getting into all that little, you got about a minute left, so
Yes,
try
sir.
to sum up what you want to do.
Yes, sir. The other violations include discrimination against their own historic sites. I can go into that later. A letter was written by the Chief Preservation Officer, Mr. Patrick McIntyre, which insults a whole segment of our state population, calling one of our historic sites based on a myth. I think you need to know about that, and I have copies of that letter as well. The abuse of power is just extraordinary. I can go into any of this in dereliction of duty. One instance in particular was state property that I personally called the office to tell them that was being destroyed, and these are historic markers that the commission should have protected, and they allowed them to be destroyed. So I just find this outrageous, and I think you need to know about these violations. Thank you.
All right, we appreciate that info. Does the committee have questions for Representative Beck? You're about out of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you say absconded with, the first violation, absconded with millions? Is that
Yes,
what you
sir.
said, or
Yes,
am I
sir.
hearing?
Yes, sir.
Trick
There-
me.
yes, sir.
Can you, that always intrigues me when somebody says that someone's absconded with millions. How
Right.
did that happen, and what are we?
Well, here we have a Wars Commission that has not met as a committee for over 6 years. They have a chairperson. He refuses to meet, and millions of dollars go through that federal agency grant money as well as state budget money. But one example is, for example, just so you'll understand what I'm talking about, is you have a 501c3 that wants to buy land that's going to be eventually given to the federal government or to the state. So there's a state grant program, and the grant is applied for, but the committee never meets. They simply depend on staff to make recommendations. There's never enough information at the commission level to understand what's actually going on, so it gets passed. And we're talking $2 million at Stones River that was adjacent land, never had a public hearing on it. We had, let's see, one piece of property just this year, less than a quarter of an acre for $87,000. Less than a quarter of an acre, no public hearing. There needs to be oversight in this commission. I used to work for the state of Tennessee in economic and community development. Public notice and public hearing are basic to what we need for democracy and to cover our budget. Make sure we're spending our money right.
Okay, since we've got minimal time, we're going to hear from the other party, and then we'll probably wrap it up.
Thank you very much.
So it looks like we've got Joseph Williams. State your name and who you're with, and
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of this esteemed committee. My name is Joseph Williams, and I serve on Governor Lee's senior staff as his Director of External Affairs. It's an honor to be with you today because this is an issue we're all incredibly passionate about, and the governor is passionate about it as well, and the legislature has incredible oversight over this process of our state's history, its heritage, and how we remember and recognize it. As the governor has stated on numerous occasions, here in Tennessee, rather than giving in to cancel culture and mobs, we respect the rule of law, representation of all voices, and standing against that cancel culture. And the governor's concern today is that this bill proposes to cancel the Historic Commission as it exists. We have some members of the Historic Commission here today, 29 excellent, diverse, and qualified Tennesseans from all over our state who serve and do this work. One of them, the legislature has incredible input already into this process. The governor is the only elected official of the entire state of Tennessee, receives input all the time. In fact, in my office, our most recent appointee, the recently retired director of the Tennessee Historical Society, Ann Topovich, our most recent appointment, she was appointed after I personally received multiple emails from members of this esteemed body recommending her to join. Kim Hinton, who is the architect of our Bicentennial Capitol Mall and our new State Library and Archives, was recently appointed. We have history professors. We have pastors of historic congregations, such as Pastor Norman, who's here from Memphis today. We have educators who help teach history at Christian schools working towards racial reconciliation. We have the former mayor of Tennessee's oldest town, Jonesboro, who's helped lead multiple historic preservation projects.
Now you got about, instead of just naming names, let's see if you can kind of.
Yes, sir. Vietnam veterans, family members of this body who, as my boys love, own Davy Crockett's rifle. This is an example of representatives of the Historic Commission who are qualified, who love this state and its history, who this bill would cancel, and they would no longer be able to serve our state. History is vitally important to me. This past summer, my boys and I, they dressed up like Davy Crockett, and we traveled around, did the Davy Crockett tour. I stumbled upon a memorial that is the burial place of Meriwether Lewis. I'm a former high school history teacher myself, so I had to stop, and that marker read, "Beneath this monument erected under legislative act by the state of Tennessee, AD 1848.
I'm gonna cut you off and ask if we have any quick questions from the committee. Representative Chairman Hawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I guess I would just ask, how do you answer the previous speaker's assertions that there were misuses and abuses?
She made a lot of very bold and aggressive accusations, which I had never heard previously. I would ask for evidence to back up those accusations, to which my knowledge we don't have any to date. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. It is time to end this fun committee. And I hate to say this, Chairman Reagan, but we'll see you again next week. And all the unfinished business will be rolled to the next calendar. And without questions or comments, we're adjourned.